wherever or whenever. It's big victories.
You could bet it all on me. Anything that I do it B-I-G. Shot caller, so they call on me. If my dogs don't eat, then they fall on me. It's the ice on the wrist for me. I'm living life like it's meant to be. Lived everyday shit, everything big. Big crib, big bands, nigga, it's a big victory.
Welcome into the Big Victories podcast. Jeremy St. Louis alongside
Big. What's up?
Mev the Renegade is also here, and we have two very special guests today. Happy to have them along. We always start ladies first. Aramis Ayala joining us. She is running for Attorney General, the state of Florida. So welcome, Aramis. Nice to have you with us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And Alejandro Madrigal is also here with us. That is quite the background, Alejandro, I must say. Very fiery.
Like the Phoenix.
That's it. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast with you, with the lady and the gentleman, and gives us a great platform to speak about the great things we're doing at C.G. Bethel High School.
Yeah, Alejandro is the principal at C.G. Bethel High School, and we'll get into some discussion about that. Obviously, school education top of mind with some of the things that have happened in this country over the last little while. Certainly, even more stuff coming out this week. But first, let's get things going.
Yeah, man, you forgot somebody though. One of the most important person. He got a yellow hoodie on.
I introduced Mev.
Oh, well, then
he always says me first.
I'm getting old. Sorry. But glad to have y'all guys on the show, and it's very important for me to actually have both of you guys on the same show. One of the reasons that I told Jeremy and Mav was important to get the honorable lady on the show with you, Principal, is because the office she's seeking has a lot to do as far as education, safeties, and everything. So, ma'am, during the whole transition time we're going through right now, what are some of the reasons that you wanted to run for Attorney General?
You know, for some reason, we're at this really dark place in politics, you know, where it's so bad that you have to choose a side. And I decided to stand up because the side of truth is the side that I stand on. The side of protecting our democracy is the side that I stand on. The side of our constitutional rights is the side that I stand on. And when you get into all of the minutia, other people can have those fights, but for me, I'm going to stand on protecting the rights and freedoms of Floridians, young and old, all across every spectrum, and that is what made me decide to stand up and fight. I've always been a fighter. I served as the elected state attorney here, up here in Orlando for 4 years, and I'm just ready to build upon the work and to be the voice for the people. That's the job of the Attorney General.
So what are some of the rights that you think are I don't want to say under threat, but that are concerning to you at this point that have kind of gotten you to where you are now in terms of getting up and actually doing something?
It's really our constitutional rights. See, I'm a professor at University of Central Florida, and during class, I was teaching my students, you know, about all of these constitutional rights. We're talking about the First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of press, you know, all of these things that we know that people can free speech. And then we often hear where people focus on one particular right and the Bill of Rights, and that's our Second Amendment, the ability to, you know, carry firearms. Then you talk a lot about the Fourth Amendment, right to search and seizure, a Fifth Amendment, right to counsel, remain silent, Sixth Amendment, lawyers, jury trials, and things like that, right to an attorney. And then we focus on the Eighth Amendment. As I'm teaching, which is cruel and unusual punishment and right to bail, as I'm teaching the students these things, I'm explaining what is happening during this current legislative session. And I'm thinking to myself, here I'm teaching them what should be done when I have the ability and the background and the strength to go actually do it. And when you talk about the specifics, I'm talking about, you know, if people want to carry their firearms and they want to talk about the Second Amendment, I think it's important for us to use those two words, well regulated. That's part of the Second Amendment, and we don't talk about the need to have regulation. You know, I have two young daughters, ages 8 and 10, one headed to middle school, the other in 3rd grade. I care whether or not they come home. And not only that, I care whether or not they're traumatized by witnessing some of their peers. I care whether or not they lose a teacher and are forever impacted. So if we're going to talk about that right, let's talk about it with its full writings and the full verbiage of it, which includes well regulated. So I think that we have to look at that particular right. We all know about the right to privacy. That is written in the Florida Constitution when we're talking about bodily autonomy and women's rights. You don't have to believe in abortion, don't have one. But to suggest that a woman shouldn't have her right to choose what happens with her body and the privacy of her health care, we've gotten too deeply involved. And finally, specifically to your other guest talking about education. We have to make certain that we are giving our children a true right, civil right to be educated. We talk about Brown versus Board of Education, all of those cases that leveled out education for Black, brown, and poor people and making certain they had access. Then we have to make certain we are not indoctrinating children, but actually educating them by giving them all of the tools, all of the information, whether we agree with it or not.
Wow. You're definitely a professor.
I don't know.
No, that's great. No, it's not in a bad way. I'm telling you, because you know what? I wasn't the best student, but I just learned something from you today.
Absolutely.
So you know what? Especially
I'm not messing around in her class. I was a kid at the back of the room. I would have been like, oh my goodness, I'm not doing anything now.
But get into that. When you spoke about the part of education. Actually, I know Mr. Alexander, you go by Alex. My brother's name is Alex, so I'm going to call you Alex.
That's perfectly fine.
What are some of the things you're looking for as your public official, as being a principal for school safeties, like in that ramification? So what are some ideas, if you had, since we do have somebody who's running for that political office, what do you have in mind?
Well, it comes from many different levels, but justice and equity are the two primary concerns from my perspective. We have a lot of children that are coming to school hungry. We got a lot of children that are poverty stricken. How do we level the playing field? How do we provide? And that's one of the goals of Edison Learning and North Star Academies, which are the educational service providers for C.G. Bethel High School. It's how do we provide educational equity everywhere? Not necessarily in one area or the other, but equity everywhere. And that there's a lot of connotations to the word equity. And that doesn't just mean poverty. It doesn't just mean, social economic. It doesn't just mean race. It means across the board equity, and that's one of the main goals that we have at CG Bethel. But in terms of what Professor Ayala was speaking to, it's absolutely true. We need to safeguard our civil liberties, but at the same time, regulation plays a big role in what's occurring. You can't have individuals that are unstable, walking around with a military rifle, basically, what those AR-15s are or what have you. Those aren't necessary in our society, and that's what happens when they get in the wrong hands. And what we're looking at is, children are suffering, teachers are suffering, families are suffering, communities are suffering. So in essence, I listened to Professor Ayala, and I can't agree with her more in terms of her position in terms of regulation.
One of the things that has stood out to me in a podcast that we did a couple weeks back, Mev, the renegade who's with us here, has handled an AR-15. He's worked in military service. He's handled an AR-15. He knows what that weapon is. He knows what it can do, and he speaks from experience. And one of the things that stood out with me, Mev, is the last time we talked about this is that, you were adamant that this is not a weapon that belongs in the hands of anybody who is not in the military or in some kind of armed service, because of the fact it is just too powerful of a weapon. So, Professor, I want to ask you, everybody's talking about regulating a well-regulated militia, but how do you turn talk into actual law, into actual things that can have a significant impact? We've seen a little move lately with some of the laws that have been passed, but how do you make that leap? How do you convince people that this is something that can be done, should be done, especially when you have so many people hanging on to the Second Amendment like it was written yesterday?
Which is true. So what I think that we have to do is, I released a gun plan as part of my gun safety and public safety plan as part of my my campaign for Attorney General. But it is important for us to recognize the legislation that is already in place that is harming the progress. So I'll give you an example. It's called the Dickey Amendment, D-I-C-K-E-Y. And the Dickey Amendment actually is a federal amendment that prohibits us from engaging in research related to gun violence. The fact that we have an amendment that does not allow us to do that.
Wow.
So and we're quiet on that because many of us don't know that. For me, as the Attorney General, why education is so important is because this is not about politics to me. This is about truth and progress. So I've done research in order to promote policies, not necessarily just promote my person. And looking at the Dickey Amendment, I think that in the state of Florida, one of the things that I want to do is begin to invest in our research of how gun violence is impacting our community. We gave a lot of thoughts and prayers, and there are certain students forever changed right here in the state of Florida after Parkland. I live here in Orlando after the Pulse shooting. The fact that we've had two major ones in a decade means that we're doing something that needs to change, and it has to start with a level of research. I think we also have to stop the rhetoric that connects this violence, especially mass shootings in particular, to people with criminal backgrounds and with mental health. If you look at the ones who are engaging, they had a right to carry a firearm. So you're looking and you're placing the blame, trying to further dehumanize individuals who have a criminal background. They don't have one, so it doesn't apply. The second thing is that when we're looking at mental health, people who have mental health issues, every bit of research proves they are in more danger of having violence inflicted upon them than them doing it themselves. So what is this? It's hate. It's the nasty rhetoric. Look, when you say we hate gay people, the LGBT community, you end up with Pulse. When you hate Black people, you end up with what happened in New York. You have people who are frustrated because they have had continuously been injected with levels of hate and destruction that we ultimately see in mass shootings.
And that's something that obviously goes towards the division that's been fostered by, certain aspects of the media and, certain whatever groups, Facebook, whatever, you name it. There's a ton of stuff out there that certainly is having a negative influence on people. Alex, so what are your thoughts on what Professor Ayala just discussed?
Basically, you're looking at a society that's been indoctrinated with that hate, and that's one of the things that we try at CG Bethel. One of the things that we try to do is to make sure that our students have a voice, and that we have safeguards in place and wraparound services in place to provide mental health, assistance to those students in need, even to the community. We opt into the Miami-Dade County Public Schools mental health program, which has been phenomenal. But on top of that, we also provide psychological services at the expense of the school. So it's an additional service that we provide. But and now we're looking at a whole nother component that COVID has, the pandemic has really issued in. Aside from the things that we had to do in terms of safety protocols and what have you in school hardening due to the Parkland massacre, we have to look at the connotations of what is going on with our students and being locked up for a year and a half at their homes and not having that interaction. And we're looking at a whole generation of students that are just focused on their phones, on their computers or what have you, and we're not getting that personalized touch to the things that we're doing. So in essence, what we do at CG Bethel is give students a voice. We have food drives. We have different things that get the students involved in the community and also give them access to civic programs and civic leaders that could also impact the student. Because if a student sees that they're heard and that they can be heard and that they have a voice, that plays a big role in how you progress in from a social and emotional standpoint.
Wow.
Now, the principal, I'm just sitting here and I'm curious. There was a question that I wanted to ask you, and I think there's no better person to ask but yourself. Being a school official and being, basically representing an entire school, where do you feel like the disconnect happens as far as education versus security, right? We have our kids, we're trying to educate them, give them a first-class education versus I want to keep my kids secure, but I don't want them to feel like they're inside of a military installation. Where's the disconnect happening, and what's the path forward to ensure that we can have A and B at the same time?
One of the things that I do is keep a great rapport with the North Miami Beach Police Department, because I think it's having that rapport with the police department and having an officer on campus really serves not only as a deterrent, but it also shows our students that they could speak up and that if they have if they have a concern, they have people that they can turn to. That's why the student voice is so important. If you see something, say something. And we're coming from a society where you don't want to be a snitch, or you don't want to be labeled as somebody that, is telling on somebody. But in essence, when you create an environment, going back to your point, when you create an environment where students have a voice, and when you have those connections with students, whether it's with the principal, whether it's with the guidance counselor, the secretary, a person who you trust, and you have mental health professionals there as well that provide that ear for students to speak to different situations, you lower the level of tension, and you could disguise, or you could, even though you have things in place that solidify and harden your school, but there's ways to go around it to create dialogue and to, serve as an intervention if the need arises or what have you. But you always have to have those, and that's something that sometimes is overlooked in terms of changes from the Parkland situation till today, is how much attention to detail needs to be put on school hardening drills and what have you.
Wow. Professor, I have spoken to a lot of politicians or people who's ready for office. I think your readiness for office is beyond. It's splendid. I think a lot of people say on day one. I think your day one is now. To be honest, I just feel like you have a plan. The plan is just not just. It's not for you. I just feel a difference. It's not about a political office. You taking on a community, and that's big.
Yeah, I've never, ever, I never sought politics. And I know people say, and it sounds like they, oh, politics found me. No, really, I believe it or not, I'm truly an introvert, and I love my private life. I am happily married. I have 2 young daughters. We live comfortably. This is about purpose, and this is about change. I can't sit comfortably knowing that I have the ability to do something while everyone else is still scrambling. I was 24 hours from death, dying of cancer at the age of 24 years old. And when I came through that, there were some promises that I made of how I would function. So this is bigger than just a name, a campaign. This is about really doing the work for the people and being a voice and never making a decision for reelection, because that's what happens. People start on the front end while campaigning. They make decisions based upon who they can get funded by, and they got to make all the money to get elected. And yes, that is important. So AramisAyala.com, make a contribution. It's hugely important.
You better say that again.
AramisAyala.com. Yes.
Now give me a moment at the end. I promise you I'm going through all that. But I'm saying to you, we get caught up in, getting there. And then once we get there, we're caught up in staying there. And then once we stay there, we get caught up in staying there. You get in this vicious cycle that you never are actually a voice for the people. So when I took office as state attorney, I looked at my husband. I said, babe, just promise me this. At any point, if you see any change in my character and what I stand for, call me on it. And when I left office, I was committed to being the same person, yes, more polished, yes, more experienced, and yes, a lot more developed and well-read. But the core of me, committed to the people, has never changed. And even when I sat down and said no more before I got back up, I was still myself. And I'm not part of the establishment. I'll never push the status quo. And the people will never say they did not have a genuine option on the ballot.
You know what? Hearing you speak, Mav, I have a question that's related to both of them, because we spoke about that in the last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
How does it relate being in the military and actually running for political office? The reason I'm asking that question, I remember you got into talking about semi-automatic and what was your training experience like. Share that with her, and maybe we can get some conversation going about the guys that's coming out of the military, how you can change their mindset. They also include the principal, because like both of you saying, it's mental health. I think mental health has a lot to do with things, but she also said something was really important. Hey, not liking when you're in the military or you're in a football team or play sports, you get along with everybody. It don't matter what color you is. Where you from, Nebraska, this is your office line. You better love him because he got a block for you. Same thing military. So share your experience about the military, and maybe, we can generate a conversation.
Yeah, I would say even, I really love your example of, playing on like a football team. It's like, okay, hey, I know this guy's my back. He's going to make that block for me. In the military, it's even more so, it's integral to who we are. It's part of our fabric. If I can't depend on my brother on my right hand and my brother on my left hand, with my life? Like, what are you standing to my left and my right for, right? So, I mean, and when it comes down to, when you boil it all down, we're all public servants, right? I joined the military because I felt not only was it going to help propel me to a place that I wanted to get personally, it was also enabling me to better serve my country as a citizen, right? My parents were immigrants. They came here. America gave them the opportunity to excel to where they are in life. I feel like I owe my country 100 years of service if I could. Unfortunately, due to laws, I can't. But, you know, it's just public service. And for me, just the aspect of being able to serve my country in that capacity and give back. And just like Professor was saying, you know, it's not about me. It's not about, you know, my personal gain. It's not about what I want to accomplish. It's about giving back. And I think a good segue from that is actually a question I wanted to ask both principal and professor is, you know, for me, I shared where that motivation came from. I'm just curious as to you guys, where that motivation comes from. Both of you are in, you know, civic servant positions, both being attorney general, aspiring attorney general, being a state prosecutor, being a professor, all civic, you know, servitude positions, and now being a principal. Like, where does that motivation to put yourself in the position to be in those positions, where does that motivation come from both of you? We can start with Ms. Aramis.
The reason that I mentioned my experience with cancer is because it forever changed my life. You know, as an attorney, you go to law school, you want to be rich, you know, and, you know, ball out of control. And it's something that I have always been committed to. You know, I remember, like, for example, when I was in the fifth grade, I was very close to my fifth grade teacher, still am. And, you know, everything that I've gone through and I've aspired, she says, I'm not surprised by any of this because that's exactly who you were, even at the age of 10. So sometimes you're just cut that way. That's the fabric, that's the cloth you come from. And, you know, we often may fight it because of where we come from. You know, it doesn't bode well with our family and our communities. But I, again, stayed true to who I was and fought that. And then when I went through the cancer, I realized that in that moment, had my life been over, what would it have stood for? You know, I remember being at a funeral one time, and the pastor said that there's the day you're born and there's the day you die, but the only thing that matters is that hash mark in between.
Wow.
And I have lived to try to make the hash mark, you know, meaningful for me and my families and the generations to come.
Wherever or whenever, it's Big Victory.
This podcast was recorded in Miami Podcast Studios. Call us now for booking 305-968-5366 for all of your video podcasting needs. 305-968-5366.
Welcome back to the Big Victory Podcast, for real.
Principal?
You know, Professor, we have something in common. I'm also a cancer survivor. So putting it, you know, going through 40 rounds of radiation and surgery really puts life in a perspective. And I'm the sole provider in my home. I have 5 beautiful children. So I could truly relate to your experience in the sense where it really puts you in a position where you look at life differently. And what could you do better? And what could you change? And how can you impact those around you, whether it's you're professionally, whether it's at home or what have you. But going through those experiences really impact you. However, going back to Mev's question, what led me to civic duty, to teaching and to education was my experience at Miami Senior High School. And some of my best friends today are the guys that I played, and I played college football as well. So I know the analogy of your teammates and the importance in not seeing, any prejudice or anything negative with the guy standing next to you. So I understand that perfectly clear. But my experience at Miami Senior High and playing football under Ralph Farza at Miami Senior High was a game changer for me, because it really led me to the realm of understanding of giving back to students, like the way that those role models and those, coaches and teachers at Miami Senior High impacted me. So that's where my love for teaching and giving back came from, because I saw people that gave of themselves to give to us as young men and women and mold our lives. And I wanted to do that as well. So that's the true impact. My high school experience really set things, in motion forward in terms of what I wanted to do. And you learn, when you learn what you want to do at a very young age, it's game changing. I went away to college to Yuma, Arizona, to Arizona Western College to play football, but I knew I wanted to be a football coach and a teacher at that point. And to be quite honest with you, and I share this with my students all the time, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that's the God honest truth. And I went through that whole cancel ordeal and I didn't miss a day of work.
Wow.
Because I truly love what I do, and the necessity of having to continue to provide for my family, of course.
I was gonna say, because I didn't go to work. I was laid up. That is not my story.
Professor, I had third and fourth degree burns on my neck. I couldn't speak. It was rough because it was all head and neck related, lymph nodes and throat. So
God bless you.
It was something else.
One of the things that I've said to a number of people is that football for me changed the course of my life. Being on a football team when I was in high school changed the course of my life, because I was an athletic kid, but I didn't play organized sports. I tried out for the football team because a bunch of my buddies were doing it, and then I end up making the team, and a couple of my buddies don't, and they're like, what? But my football coach saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, and over the course of my high school career, it taught me so many things about, teamwork and being a part of something and expecting more of yourself and understanding that there is more to you than what you might think. And so for me, football had something that changed the very course of my life. And I've actually had the good fortune to be able to tell my football coach that in a speech that I gave, that he altered the course of my existence. But one of the things I wanted to ask the both of you is, how do you, as parents now, you're both in careers of service, and you've been that way throughout your adult life. But nowadays, there is so much focus on having everything. I want this. I want that. I got to be rich. I've got to have this. I've got to have the phone, the car, the house. How do you go about teaching your kids that it's not just about that it is about service, not just service to your country, but service to your community? Professor, I'll start with you here to answer that.
So, way deeper than, unfortunately, I don't have just a surface answer. I can't give you that because I don't have that.
You could be a motivator. You need to get a motivated speaker, man.
So, two things. The first one is that the biggest struggle as a mother for me with two little girls is to find this balance. I want my children to have high expectations, but don't you ever feel entitled to anything. And that's the tightrope that we're constantly moving, that you better expect more of yourself. But you don't have a right to that. That's constantly, that rope that we're going. But the way that I have lived, I've lived a life of faith. I am a Christian. And I believe in Christian values. The problem is that being in office, too many politicians and people with positions believe that their religion should legislate other people instead of control them. So I have taught my children that my religion is for me. And your religion is the thing that should support you, to guide you into your ultimate purpose and walk on this earth. So I let my children know that there's accountability at the end of the road that has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you have, who knows you. And it is not about getting the approval of the people, because the same people who love you, if you care about them and you hear what people say, then the ones who hate you, their hatred and their anger will ring just as loud. So blocking out all voices is the only way to move forward. So yes, believe in yourself, hope for good things, but you better leave a mark on this earth that says goodness, kindness, and all the things that we stand for.
Damn, she went for president.
I love it.
I like it.
Alex, follow that up.
Well, at the end of the day, your children look at you for guidance, and they look at you. You know, you're the ultimate role model, whether you believe it or not. They're seeing you. They're seeing the steps that you take. They're seeing the moves that you make. They're seeing how you carry yourself as a person. And going back to Professor Ayala's faith, God has a lot to do with how we handle ourselves as human beings and as people. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you're going to have to meet your maker one way or the other. So it's imperative to do unto others as others do unto you, and give back and give of yourself, because at the end of the day, you got to look in the mirror and understand how you can make a difference. So your kids are looking at you, you're looking at yourself, and you always want to see a reflection of you and your faith in your children. And that's without needless to say, that's the most critical component. I give of myself. In fact, today, my oldest son, who's 27, he calls me because he ran into an old wrestling teammate of his from high school. And he's looking for an opportunity to go into corrections or law enforcement. Well, guess what? I have a connection in the city of North Miami Beach. So you pass it forward. You pass that favor forward, and you continue to help people. I don't care how it turns out, as long as I provide that opportunity to any individual. So going back to the point, with your children, you just provide the example and show that you have heart, show that you got a sound mind and a sound heart, and that everything you do is for the betterment of those around you. And at the end of the day, God recognizes that, like Professor Ayala mentioned.
Y'all sure y'all don't know each other? But on a serious note, though, I want to get to one of the reasons that we have you guys on the show. I want you to tell me more about your school, and I want you to tell me more about your campaign, ma'am. What makes your campaign different from maybe your predecessors or who you don't have to name who you're running against, but some of the things, the bullet point where somebody can look at that, this is different.
I mean, my existence, number one. Like, wow, I represent a different face of politics, and I stand by the things that I say. I was elected in 2016 and became the first African-American state attorney in the state of Florida. I have served my community, but I share with people on the resume, and to get, the kudos and all of that about being the first, anything is wonderful. The question is, did you behave like the first? Did you take first opportunities? Did you do something different, or did you maintain the status quo? And I am proud that I have, and no one else in the race has ever been a first who came forward and made change the way that I have, creating diversion programs for people who have drug addictions, people in the military, creating programs for people with mental health issues, suspended license, reducing encounters with police officers. I developed a list of officers who have questionable credibility so that we can preserve the ones who we want and expose the ones who are dangerous to our community. I created a conviction integrity unit that protected people from wrongful convictions. I led the state and bail reform. These are things that I have done in changing the face of justice for the state of Florida, and I'm proud of that. So it is not about showing up for the first time to run a statewide race. It is about having proven yourself in a position in your local family. I have served my family. I pride myself on being a good wife. I pride myself on being a good mother, and that I was good to my profession, and that I've been good to my community. And now I'm ready to show the state that I can be good to them, being a representative of the people. I'm the only person who's been endorsed by grassroots organizations and a diverse people, and a diverse group of people. Endorsements say who speaks for you and who you will speak for. And I stand with the people. I've been endorsed by labor unions. I've been endorsed by ruthless women. I've been endorsed by Youth for Climate Action and Environment. I've been endorsed by Florida, the college Dems, the young ones who understand that they have to have a future, the Collective PAC. These are people who have stood with me as I was state attorney and still believe in me now. That is what makes me different. I'm trying, like I said in the beginning, protect our constitutional rights and freedoms, give real public safety that is more than just mass incarceration, and making the economy work for all of us so that we're not dealing with fraud. Our consumer rights are protected. We're dealing with affordable housing, but it's all about having the opportunity to be a voice for the people.
Wow. And Principal Alex? tell us more about your school. I actually visited his school last week, and he mentioned something. I wanted to jump in when he mentioned it. I was leaving the school after I shake hand with him. We spoke for a second, and he had to turn back. This police officer behind me. Alex done told the police officer to go chase me down to come back. So I'm all like that. I'm looking for my license, and I was like, oh God, they're not pulling me over. He was actually his buddy. You know, I'm like, that's the whole thing. Talking about community and policing. My thing, where I'm from, you see a police, if you're asleep, you're awake. You're awake, you know.
Well, what we do at CG Bethel, what's different, like I said, and I've mentioned it 20 times before, is the fact that we give our students a voice, whether it's in the community. The lady that really attached Victor and myself together, Miss Montpremier, is our community involvement liaison. So she brings in different branches of the community, whether it's providing clinics that provide free services to our students and their parents, to the entire school community, whether it's the food drive, the food drive with Farm Share. There's a lot of different things that we do that bring the community to the school, but the school also serves as a beacon to the community. But what sets us apart is the opportunities that we provide. It's a digital curriculum that really helps students facilitate their process. We have students that graduate early. We have students that catch up to their cohort and go back to the school, their home school. So it's about creating options for our students. Those students that have fallen behind, you give them the option to catch up. Those students that want to graduate early, you give them that opportunity to graduate early. And not allowing the level of the education that you're providing to dwindle. You keep it at a high level. You provide honors courses. You provide everything that you would get at a traditional high school. However, you're doing it a little differently. You're thinking outside the box to provide those opportunities for students and give them options at the end of the day, where those kids that want to go to the workforce immediately. We have a CTE nursing program where students could graduate not only with their high school diploma, they could graduate with their certificate in nursing assisting. So, and now we're going to implement another program, a barbering and nail tech program coming into the next school year, because our goal is to have students that are ready to either go into the workforce or whatever options that they foresee. Like we mentioned the armed services earlier. The armed services are a totally different experience to when I was coming up, where that was a third or fourth option. You could go into the military and graduate and do your time and earn a master's degree. And at the end of the day, you come out better prepared than you were when you came in. You can earn certificates to drive heavy machinery, and all these things the military has to offer nowadays. And they're once you're done with your time with the military, you're coming out prepared for the workforce. And you have that veteran advantage. You have different things that come with being in the military. So those are all these nuances that we bring to our school. And at the end of the day, it's to provide different services and different avenues to students that come to CG Bethel High School.
And one of the best parts about that whole thing is Vic's now going to have a place to get his haircut.
Yeah, that's it. Man, haircut's like $60 now. Man.
Yeah, that's right there.
That's it.
Let's go.
We'll be right back with the Big Victories podcast.
This podcast was recorded in Miami Podcast Studios. Call us now for booking 305-968-5366 for all of your video podcasting needs. 305-968-5366.
The Big Victories podcast, hosted by Big Vic, with co-hosts Mev the Renegade and Jeremy St. Louis.
Every morning that I wake up, say a prayer and thank the maker for the.
You're both people of faith. You've both mentioned and touched on that. But Professor Ayala, I wanted to ask you, NPR did a piece this week on the rise of the Christian right within the Republican Party and basically how they've basically taken over the Republican Party in this country. And
I saw her face.
And we have conservative judges now in the Supreme Court. We alluded to Roe v. Wade very loosely in terms of body autonomy. But I wanted, as someone who's been involved in lawmaking and in that portion of society and is looking to become the Attorney General for the state of Florida, I wanted to get your your opinion on that kind of thing happening and how we are seeing the landscape change very drastically here in the United States politically.
I think it is extremely important for us to recognize what we all learned in basic civics and social studies, and that's this thing called separation of church and state. Yep. There's a reason that we have a separation of church and state. And even though I am proud and I try to develop my life based upon, the positive Christian principles, I don't want them legislated, because if someone else with a different religion one day becomes in charge, then they're now able to legislate the way that they want to. Our religion and our way of life is for the privacy of our own homes. And I think that when we are promoting or celebrating this, it is extremely dangerous. I just realized, like, you guys are all gentlemen and I am sitting here. And so I felt a little bit like, this is awkward. I never played football. I didn't play basketball, right? But I understood the analogy of team. And just for, example, what I think is happening is that we all want to be part of a team. We all believe in team, and it makes us better people. On November 11th, what happened? We were a team of Americans. It didn't matter where you came from. We had a tragedy. People lost their lives in New York. You think about all the things that happened on 9/11, and it was an American culture, an American team. And then a few years later, we changed the dynamics of our politics. And, you can point to one person, because I do, but the whole thing of let's make America great again, red this, blue that, we don't like you, you don't like us. Now, instead of us being one team of power in the nation, we have resorted to being two different teams, and it is to the destruction of our democracy. And we have to be very careful about infighting within this country, because no one can win when you aren't considering the other part of who you are. We are all one.
How do you go about bringing people together then when you have such division? We've made those football analogies, but it also has a negative connotation attached to it, because now we've separated into two teams, right? Now we've separated into teams. My red team has to beat your blue team, and we're going to find any way that we can to try to beat your blue team, or we're going to find any way we can to beat your red team. So how do you go about trying to get everybody on the same team and row the boat in the same direction and fulfill all of the needs of everybody?
Did y'all wear red and blue on purpose?
No, no. This is not on purpose. This is not on purpose.
Okay. Anyways, the reason that the way that you do it is by finding common ground. When people want to create division, they highlight the small amount of differences that we have. While someone may not agree on abortion, some may not want to be a part of the LGBT community, someone may not agree on certain aspects of it. We all want our voice heard. We all want our privacy. We all want public safety. We all want fair economy. That's why in my campaign, I am fighting for the things that matter to everyone. Now, if you want to pick it apart, then you are determined to not agree. But if you want to find the common ground and for productivity, you will come to the side that brings us all together. Not for me, but for the issues that impact everyday people.
Alex, what do you think about that?
Well, you look at our society, you look at the American culture, you look at our American history. Whenever there's been adversity, and Professor Ayala brought up 9/11, whenever there's been adversity is when America comes together and shows their strength and shows their resilience. We're at the crossroads. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of division. So there needs to be politicians and those in power need to come together and understand that we're losing our middle class. We're losing our voice. We're coming into times that could impact everybody, whether rich, poor, black, white, Hispanic, whatever the case, we're all being impacted. When you're here in Miami-Dade County alone, you're looking at property prices soaring, rental prices are exorbitant. There's people that are going to be afflicted and impacted by these things unless people come together and start bridging communication and addressing the needs of those that vote, those that don't vote, addressing the needs of society. So that's, in a nutshell, that's where it needs to go. But historically, America always comes through at the end of the day.
You know, if I can just add one thing to
Please
that,
do.
and I think he reminded me of something that I tell people. We're all going to be impacted. And if you think that you're not, you have to remember this saying: when you think you're safe, you're next.
Yeah.
We saw that in politics.
Yeah. You know something, this is like, the reason I keep smiling, because like when I came up with the idea with my guys to create this podcast, it was for people such as you guys to actually come tell your story. Because Mav, when we sat in that apartment, we was like, we got to create something, people who were significant come tell his story, but not just about political or music or anything, can actually reach out to somebody such as myself, because I was one of these kids that was lost. I wish I had a teacher such as yourself, Professor, and I wish I had a principal such as you, because when I was growing up in middle school, high school, my teacher was telling me I was never going to be anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And your story is different. You telling me that you went back to your fifth grade teacher and, has spoke highly of her. Me, if I ever see my fifth grade teacher, I'll punch her in the nose, because she told me I was going to be nothing. I was going to be dead in the age of 18. Like, you know what I mean? She wrote my book. But, you know what I'm saying? This is why it's so important for us to get people such as yourself, y'all two guys, guys and girls, to actually come and tell a true story. Be human. A lot of people, when they go to these interviews, they just talk about political, or they don't let people know, like, y'all said something which I didn't even think y'all. He spoke about cancer. A lot of people keep that away from people. They think it's a vulnerability. To me, that's strength. Because there's somebody else that's going through the same thing you're going through, and you reach them. So I commend you guys. I appreciate you guys coming on and telling these stories. And I want to keep talking to you guys, because I want to find out about you, the 16-year-old version of you, sir, ma'am. How was it? If you can go back to your 16-year-old self, what would you tell yourself today?
I'll let you go, Alex.
That means it's going to be a good story.
Yeah.
I tell my kids this all the time. When going through high school and being I was a 3-year starter on the varsity at Miami Senior High. I had a lot of success, but I never had to crack open a book. I do just enough to get by. So if I had the opportunity to go back, I
was a quarterback. I did that. I was just enough to get by.
If I had an opportunity to go back, and I tell my kids all the time, my students and my own children, don't settle. Crack open those books, study hard, work on your math, work on different things, find whatever your passion is, find it early, and find it, early in life, in order to follow it and pursue your dreams in terms of that passion. So that's what I would tell my 16-year-old self. Put some effort into your schoolwork. Football is only temporary. You only have so much football to play, but you do have a lifetime of learning ahead of you. So don't settle. That's what I tell my 16-year-old self.
Well put.
I would tell myself the same thing that my daddy has always told me. I'm all daddy's girl, and that is you're enough. He still reminds me, because there's so many young people who deal with insecurities, and they're always looking for the approval of others. And once you get deeper into politics, it makes it 10 times worse. Then you become a piece of what someone else has created. So hearing that you're enough, you're fine the way that you are, keep going, keep moving, keep fighting, stay authentic. Those are the lessons that I learned as a young girl that even at the age of 47, I hold dear to me, and I give to my children as well.
Wow. How, I guess we've touched on this before, it's just the difficulty of, you talk about, we could all talk about our 16-year-old selves and how much easier life was, and, uphill both ways, barefoot in the snow, that kind of thing.
That's how my stuff stayed at attention.
Yeah, exactly. But how much more difficult is it nowadays? Getting back to kind of parenting a little bit, but how much more difficult is it nowadays to kind of instill those values into your kids, because of the fact that they're just subjected to so much more judgment and capitalism and just, I don't want to say indoctrination is not the right word, but influenced by so many different outside sources than we were when we were their age.
The information age has really impacted their development. They are exposed to things way sooner than they should be. I mean, my 8-year-old, I've had to discuss with her what an abortion is.
You serious?
Right? I mean, I've had to, and it's I have my 10-year-old. She's a competitive gymnast, and I was looking on their her text messages, and she's on a thread with young girls her age. They were talking. One of them was at the lake where they thought there was another shooting on 4th of July, and they were like, "We can't live like this. This isn't fair to us." They won't even take away guns from people. And the other came back, yeah, they want to control our bodies, but they won't control guns. This is a group of 10 to 12-year-old girls having this conversation. So they have been exposed to way more than they need to, wondering what their rights are. You know, my daughter, my 8-year-old, I needed to explain to her, it was Black History Month, and one of the girls on the playground told her that she just doesn't think Black people deserve anything special. So she had to come home and ask me what that meant. So trying to keep them rooted and grounded in their self-pride, but also understanding that hate and discrimination and all of that is a part of the world that we're going to live in. It really is. We don't have the ability to filter and guard our children from information. So we have to have conversations way earlier and get them prepared way earlier. And that's what we're not used to.
Wow. Mav.
No, hang on. Principal. I want Principal to answer this.
Yeah,
I want Alex to answer this.
Yeah, because I want Mav.
She answered it in a nutshell. You have, the cell phone is, the gateway to all sorts of information. And how do you regulate that at home is by communicating with your children and letting them know different perspectives. And Professor Ayala brought up a great point earlier on in our conversation where she allowed her children to explore religion and understand their own relationship with God or their own faith. And I think in turn, you look at information and you look at social media, for instance. People are going to put their best lives on social media.
Oh, yeah.
Not everything you see on social media.
Everybody's rich. Everybody's rich. Everybody's a model.
Living their best life. But, you keep your children grounded. You allow them to understand that there's limitations to life, that not everything is glitz and glamour, that there's hard work and sacrifice in everything that you do, and that the journey and one of the things that I've learned to live by is that the journey is what's important, not the end result. Because the journey is what you're going to remember. Going back to Professor Ayala's point on that dash, you're going to run the race and you're going to win. And if you win the race, great. But you're not going to remember about winning that race. You're going to remember all the hard work, the dedication, and training or what have you it took to win that race. So in essence, it's about going back and I can't agree more with Professor Ayala and educating your children and letting them know the pitfalls of X, Y, and Z and letting them know what's out there. My wife does a tremendous job of really truly communicating with our kids here at home. We've raised 5 beautiful children together. So it's that balance, and I had the privilege of having my 2 older kids with me at Barbara Goldman Senior when I was teaching. So I had them there with me at school. So I had that layer. So now it's a little different, but at the same token is about understanding the pitfalls of social media and the pitfalls of information, letting them know, you can't believe everything you read on Google, do your due diligence and inform yourself correctly and understanding where your positions are.
I just think the education of critical thought is what is so important nowadays. Teaching kids to think critically. And in this information age, as you both have pointed out, it is so vital to just make sure that you're questioning the things that you are exposed to, that you are reading, and try to find sources that you can go to that can perhaps give you a better perspective, a more well-rounded view of kind of the information that you're taking in. Mev?
I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking and just listening to, everybody. We're talking about how, both of you guys are parents, raising beautiful children, and, Vic talking about his home life and Jeremy talking about his home life. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I think one of the for me, it's just a theory I have. I always have a theory every episode, but I just feel like, I
better be good.
For me, in my
Okay,
experience, or what I've seen, this is purely just Mevin 101. I just feel like the destruction of the family in America has led to so many other residual issues that we need to get back to fostering families in America.
But hang on a second.
Right.
I want to explore this a little bit. I want you to expand on this because I want to know what do you mean in terms of the destruction of the family?
So, for instance, right, I think of my personal experience growing up. I grew up North Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, right? I'm thinking of all of my friends from, even just taking from high school, right? My friends who were in high school who are probably still in Jacksonville, either doing the same or worse than they were in high school, as opposed to the kids who, my peers who are now doing either the same or better after high school.
Why don't you tell them what you do, Mav?
No, just
No, I need for you to tell them because you're going to
what
give
I do now or what I've done
what you
since high
now,
school, 'cause I've done a few things.
No, what you're doing now, because I'm going to give your service away to professor, to the principal.
Oh no, that's fine. I mean, it's kind of obvious behind me. I have a billboard plaque. I'm a music producer now, and I'm also a student. But after high school, I went student, music producer, military, back to music producer. So it's like I've done a few things in my life, but going back to my point was, for me, where I see the disconnect in my peers was the family. You had, and it's nothing against them because that was just their circumstances, but the kids who came from a single parent home as opposed to the kids who came from 2-parent homes, right? Or who you had some kids who lived with mom, dad, 2 aunts, and 2 uncles, right? There were some homes that were like that. But just for myself, seeing that disconnect, and it's like, okay, now I'm starting to see a pattern. And that hurts me.
But you know what, though? The one thing that I think two things we have to be mindful of is we talked about it on social media, that what you see is not necessarily, what it is. It's the same way even back in our day, because there were a lot of 2-parent homes where there was abuse going on, there was sexual abuse going on, there was drugs going on. There's a lot. And then they walk outside and they put on the face while the one mother has 3 jobs, but there's love in that home. There's support in that home. That's the first thing. The second thing, and I think this is even more important for us to be mindful, when we say we have to get back there, going back doesn't consider the way that we move forward. So the values of family is one thing, but if we consider how families have evolved to include, LGBTQ community, to include, more adoptions, to include those things, if I hear someone say, go back, it makes me believe that I'm not included in your back, because that's how I felt when Make America Great Again, Let's Go Back. So even though we may mean the values of protection, the values of unity, the values, I think we have to be careful to say it the way that our hearts mean it, so that we're not harming other people who weren't included back then when we had more family values.
You're listening to the Big Victories podcast.
This podcast was recorded in Miami Podcast Studios. Call us now for booking 305-968-5366 for all of your video podcasting needs. 305-968-5366.
The Big Victories podcast, hosted by Big Vic, with co-hosts Mev the Renegade and Jeremy St. Louis.
Just to be clear, whenever I say I want us to get back to fostering families, I totally mean that within itself. Boil down, boom, family, period. To me, whatever your person A's idea of family is, as opposed to person B's family is, and to be honest, growing up in high school, I did have a friend who came up in, they had 2 moms, right?
Yeah.
So, I am older. I'm a little older than I look.
Yeah, you are.
I'll be honest, I don't want to date myself, but yeah, even growing up for me, graduating high school 2008, that was something that we faced back then. And for me, that was an idea of family. And I respected that. had, went to that person's house and, everything was cool. But to me, they had a complete family to me, right?
Yeah.
So I just want us to get back to fostering families. And I feel like that's not something that's fostered in our community. Me personally, that's my personal belief.
Question.
Hang on. Go ahead, Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I agree with the point that the dynamic of the family is important, but how not the dynamic, but the foundation of it.
Yes.
The foundation of it. And we've gone and we've spoken about faith, and it doesn't matter what religion you follow, as long as that you have that strong foundation. Any building, any house that you have, if the foundation is strong, everything else will withstand hurricane winds or what have you. So that's a great point, that it's about, doesn't matter what the dynamic is, 2 moms, 2 dads, whatever the case might be, as long as the foundation is strong, you're headed in the right direction in terms of raising, productive, strong individuals.
So be clear, I didn't think that anyone was saying that. That I didn't. When I think about people listening, I'm always sensitive to how it could be heard. I really didn't think you meant that at all.
No, seriously, no. Yeah, and with 100%, we have to be sensitive, 100%. And I don't want anybody to get any misconceptions about what I meant by that. But no, I'm glad Alex cleared it up, Principal. Thank you so much. But yeah, it's more so just getting to the core of the foundation. I want our children to be able to have that foundation, and for that foundation to be fostered, And I think one thing that also pains me is just seeing, kids come from a single parent household, then thus creating another single parent household that's going to create another single parent household. And we have to break that chain, in my eyes.
Great.
Well, and as much as the Supreme Court has, wants us to go back to the early 70s to pay 2022 prices for everything, I mean, I think that, I think the point is certainly a very valid one, that no matter what kind of family you have, having that, as you said, Principal Alex, that foundation is what is the most important thing.
Question for me is basically, a lot of people hear Attorney General or Principal. Can you tell of good folks what are the responsibility of being Attorney General and a principal? What are the roles? Like, what do you get elected? What are the sections are you responsible for?
The Attorney General is the people's lawyer. So in any violation of your constitutional rights, the Attorney General should be standing up. So this past legislative session, we heard the abortion ban, for example. Our current Attorney General said she's going to support the abortion ban. I would have said, no, it is a violation of our privacy and it will not stand. The don't say gay. All the teachers are concerned about it being unconstitutional. I would have said that's a local issue. Let the teachers decide what works in their schools. Absolutely not. I won't support it. So the AG, Attorney General, is the protector of our constitutional rights, is the protector of consumer rights and enforcement. The Attorney General is literally the legal arm of the state on behalf of the people to ensure that our rights are protected, our constitutional freedoms exist, that we have public safety, and that any issues related to the economy that are violating our rights, she speaks up for.
Is it strictly just obviously a nonpartisan position?
It is not.
It's not?
No, it's a part. Yeah, like I'm on the Democratic ticket for the primary.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you're not the first. Everyone thought, even me, a state attorney, it's nonpartisan. I had people say, and then as soon as I say, they're like, oh, well, it's sort of like it. I'm like, no, not this. Like, it really is a partisan race. I'll be on the Democratic primary ticket August 23rd.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people walk in there and look for the D's and the R's. So at least, wow. Principal, what are the responsibility of a principal?
Well, basically providing a safe and secure learning environment that's, equitable to all students and and giving access to every student that comes into our building, safety, a good program that's robust in the tools that we provide our students and the curriculum that we provide our students, and making sure that students make progress, that students learn, that students make learning gains, that students enjoy coming to school. There's a lot of different aspects to it. I keep an open door policy where my office door is constantly open, and we have that flexibility for parents to come in whenever they're available. We broke the mold of the traditional open house where we set a time, and that's when you got to be here, because life today dictates that you need to have flexibility. So we open up our open house. It's from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that way, when parents are available, come on in. Let's visit, because that's one huge determining factor is that parental involvement. We've seen a lot more success when we've had high levels of parental involvement than opposed to when, you see that you're not communicating with parents or what have you. So for me, my main responsibility is ensuring that parents and students are engaged in the learning process at our school to see students progress.
See, I told you it's more than just handing out suspensions to you.
I thought it was, I don't know. But listen, how do you become a principal, though? Do you just from a teacher to, what do you do? What's the process?
You basically, there's certain avenues that you could take, but you need to have a master's degree in educational leadership. At least that's been my case. And then you partake in different professional development processes within the school district or the state. You get certified. You take a test called the FELE, the Florida Educational Leadership Exam. You pass that exam. You get the Ed Leadership in your certificate, and you go from there. You basically put yourself in a position where you're eligible to become a school leader.
Well, one of the reasons I actually asked Mav to say what he does, and I'm also going to ask Jeremy to say what he does, is because I know you have a lot. I was giving y'all service away. Sorry, guys. It's because I know you have a lot of different services in that school, and I was wondering, do you have anything that deal with music?
No, but it's something that we want to explore.
Well, you got a guy here who's a platinum producing. You know what I mean? He got a lot of plaques.
That's it.
Mav, you need to get involved.
Ma'am, I'd love to have you come on board once we kick off the school year. One of the things that we do is we have that first week, we have a lot of activities that set the tone for our school year. So having you come in, you're a young guy. You talked about graduating in 2008.
Yeah, 2008. I'm like, what?
When I heard him say that, I was like, dude, really?
I'm like, for crying out loud, I graduated 20 years before you did. What are you talking about?
Hey, it's fine. I still get ID'd. It's fine.
When someone IDs me, I go, God bless you.
But yeah, definitely. And Jeremy, you're not getting off the hook. Jeremy happens to be one of the prestige journalists, sportscaster, on interview everybody on all over the main television channels. Jeremy, I definitely would need for you to do something with the school.
I'm happy to do anything. I work for CBS Sports. I work for the national arm of CBS Sports. I work on the digital channel CBS Sports HQ. So I'm well versed in all of the sports stuff, but I'm also pursuing a master's because principal, I want to get into teaching at some point. It passed along some of my bad habits.
An opening in biology if you want to come in.
Professor, Principal Alex, it's funny you say that. I do also have a Bachelor of Science degree.
He is a scientist. He's a scientist.
Major in natural science, minors in chem and psych. So I can certainly...
I'm the dumbest one here.
I can certainly do some of that. Before I went into journalism, I actually wanted to do teaching, but and I do all kinds of stuff. So I mean, I'm more than happy to help out with whatever is needed. Most of the time, it's just to record answering machine messages for people with the voice that I have. But
I think you could do a voiceover for a great professor. But definitely, Professor. You know what? I think today's going to have to be one of the better show that we're actually conducting today, because you know what? I love to teach people the stuff that I personally don't know. And some of this, you know what? People talking about Amendment 8 and all that stuff. Like, I didn't know anything about that. And I'm supposed to be well versed in far as like some of these things. For you to come up here and say the way you explain it, it's so easy. If we get some of these politicians to just be more human. When I said people tell me, what are you talking about? They are alive. I'm not talking about alive. Like being able to share a life with you, let you know what, I go through the same struggle, but this is why I came to this decision. So what makes you so open about it?
I ain't scared.
Oh, that
Yes.
The thing is, most people do or don't do things out of fear. And there's nothing what can you do? I have faced death. I have faced death threats. When it's my time, I'll go. But until then, I'm a fight.
Just that answer is just the best. I ain't scared. I ain't scared. I'm gonna throw that in at some point. I'm gonna do a highlight set or something. I'm gonna be like, he ain't scared. But I wanted to ask, Principal, I wanted to ask you, because obviously guns in schools and mass shootings in schools and stuff is, top of mind. We've all seen the Uvalde video this week about how ineffective the authorities were in that situation, and kind of, I don't want to say they contributed to it, but obviously they didn't do enough to prevent what happened from happening. But I also saw a thing this week about some kind of a room that they want to put in schools. It's some kind of a safety box or something. Jesus. So if there's some kind of an armed situation, students can go into this safety box, which can't be gotten into. But I wanted to ask you, Principal, as someone who oversees a school, what is your level of fear in terms of, will this happen to me? Will this happen here?
Well, you can't guarantee safety. You can't say 100% that you're going to be safe wherever you go. No matter if you're at the supermarket, you see what happened in Buffalo, New York. Whether you're at a parade, you saw what happened on the 4th of July in Illinois. So you can't guarantee safety anywhere you're at. But you could have precautions in place and prepare for the event of those situations. For example, now we're required to have 3 safety drills every single month throughout the school year. One
what do you do?
Active shooter. Huh?
How do you teach active shooter? Does somebody come to the school?
No, we partake. We purchase a program called Vector Solutions, and we do trainings based through Vector Solutions. We also have district trainings that we partake in. And we do walkthroughs with the North Miami Beach Police Department. So there's a lot of safeguards in place. But let's face it, if you encounter one of those situations, nothing could prepare you for any of those situations. There's nothing, no drill or anything that you could do that could, basically replace the actual thing from happening. So you could prepare as much as you want, but you could also make sure that the people in your building are educated in terms of what to do if those situations take place. So that's where the drills and that's where the active shooter drills, that's where the bomb threat drills and things of that nature are in place. So the old adage, if you prepare to fail, if you fail to prepare to fail, that's where that comes in.
And Professor, I mean, you said it about your daughters, that they're having that chat and saying they're not going to change this. They're not going to take the guns away. I honestly hope, it's just, it boggles my mind that kids have to be subjected to active shooter drills. When we were in school, we had fire drills. That was it. We had a fire drill.
Get on.
That was it. The fire drill. Now it's active shooter drills. Get under your desk and all this. And it's just, I have a problem just even wrapping my mind around kids.
Canadian. You told him you're Canadian, right?
Yeah, I'm Canadian, so obviously it's a little bit different. I grew up in kind of a different atmosphere, obviously. But do you believe that it is going to be contingent on the people that come after us to make the change that we just can't find the courage to make?
I hate to say this, but I believe the change is going to be found when those who are connected to the financial support keeps and sustains guns until they're directly impacted. I don't wish that upon anyone. My best friend was shot and killed at the age of 18. She was shot by her boyfriend. You're never the same after you have experienced something like that. And you fight for it. But when you can turn off the human side of the loss and just keep moving, then you have lost your humanity. And I think that's what we have to get rid of, are people who are serving in human bodies but have zero human heart. And until their heart is awakened, either by personal experience or otherwise, I think they're going to continue to support the gun culture because it is the gun lobby that supports them in their position in power.
And that's the thing is we've had this discussion. We've had this discussion before, and we've asked that question before. Like, do you think that it's going to take somebody that's involved in the gun lobby, somebody that is in a position of power, being directly affected by gun violence, for it to change? And Professor, you have a much larger brain than I do, and you're in a different position than I am. But I honestly don't know if if even that would change it, given the strength of the lobby, the strength of the culture, and how that particular branch of American society just clings to that Second Amendment.
That actually happened. What about the rep that actually got shot doing a baseball game some years back? And he's the biggest. What's his name? He's like fourth in line, and a Republican. He got shot doing a baseball.
I remember
Congress baseball game.
Yeah, I remember. Gabby Giffords. I remember she got shot. Yeah, and that But at the same time, I mean, hey, I'm all for the Second Amendment. Give everybody muskets, because that's what it was when it was written. When it was written, that's what they had. Do you think the fathers saw that they would have AR-15s in 150 years, 250 years versus muskets? That's the thing. You want to have your guns? Fine. Here's a musket. You're going to be able to shoot one person, because by the time you try to get it reloaded, it's not going to happen. It's going to be people all over you.
I won't disagree with you. My hope is in something will happen. Like, not dangerous. I don't wish anything, but my hope is that something will trigger the human heart of people who are supposed to be serving other human beings and doing right by them. Because as long as you serve money and power, then there is no hope. So it is my belief that something can happen to wake people up and to remind them. And I just hope it's not too late.
I think it's happening now, where you're seeing young children lose their lives due to senseless acts of irresponsibility by people that are owning these weapons that are, and we go back to the point of regulation. When you see our kids that they're looking over their shoulder and concerned about what might come in through that door, I think we've all been affected to this point already. And it's changed how schools are operating. It's changed how we're securing and hardening our schools. And I think, regulation is the key to all that.
Good. Guys, we coming down to the last 10 minutes of the show. Professor, I definitely want to know more about how can they contribute to your campaign. And once again, you can refresh them real quick. What is your campaign about? And also, Alex, you can definitely tell them about your school and how they can actually enroll in your school, what your school is about. I'll give you guys the last 10 minutes and get your point across so people can reach out to you guys.
Now let me be political. My name is Aramis Ayala, and I'm just kidding.
I like you.
Political ad right there. I approve this message.
Seriously, my name is Aramis Ayala, and I'm running to be Florida's next Attorney General. We are in a time where we're literally fighting for our lives. We're fighting for our safety. We're fighting for our freedoms. That you have some people, claiming that we are a free state. Well, if you are anything other than a rich, conservative white male, you are not free. The reality is, if you sit anywhere in the margins, you need an attorney general who is going to fight for you and your freedoms, because that is the way we protect our democracy. I have the background to do it. I have the history, and I have the vision forward to make it happen. I am a proud Democrat running on a Democratic primary ticket on August 23rd. It is a steep climb. We have a lot of money to raise in order to get the word out. Politics is not about money, but it is about having enough money to get the word out. That it costs to send text messages. It costs to get literature. It costs to have the experts in there to help you get the word out. So I would appreciate the contributions, even if you're only able to donate a little bit. You can do it on a recurring basis. But my website is aramisayala.com. That's ARAMISAYALA.com. If you visit the website, you can learn more about me and my platform. You can also really learn more about me on my platform and follow me on Twitter, where I do speak openly. My Twitter handle is Aramis Ayala FL. I am also on Facebook and Instagram, and I would love to ultimately earn your vote. You can register to vote up until July 25th. And early voting starts on August 8th. Aramis Ayala for Attorney General for the state of Florida. Thank you.
Wow.
Just followed.
Hey, just followed. You just got one follow.
Yep. Just followed.
Thank you.
I'm there for that.
Principal Alex.
I am the proud principal at CG Bethel High School, where we cater to a population of students that are underserved and have struggled at traditional high schools or are looking for an alternative type of education where they go at their own pace. We're located in the heart of the city of North Miami Beach. Our website is www.cgbethelhs.com. We're there to serve students from the ages of 15 through 21 and 8 months of age that have fallen behind, that have dropped out. We do recovery of dropout. We're a dropout prevention, dropout recovery school where we give all sorts of opportunities to our students. And in addition to that, we've added a CTE program in nursing assisting, and now we're going to add an additional program in barbering. And our true goal is to impact our community and the dropout rate in our area.
All right. Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure having both of you join us here on the Big Victories podcast. We've really enjoyed the conversation. Professor Ayala, AramisAyala.com. Good luck with your campaign for Attorney General. I think you've grabbed a few votes here on this particular conversation, and it only takes one, right? You only need one more than the other one. So maybe there's a winning vote here. AramisAyala.com if you want to donate to Professor Ayala's campaign. And Alex, it's been great having you, and I want to thank you both for the service to your country and to your community with the things that you are accomplishing, that you have accomplished to this point, and that you're going to accomplish moving forward. It's been great having you with us on the Big Victories podcast. For Big Vic and Mev the Renegade, I'm Jeremy St. Louis. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Big body, bimmer. Y'all them love me one fin me like then a big bulldog. 4-4 air trigger. Any boy this will get him head top, lift up in the push start. Big body, bimmer. Y'all them love me one fin me like then a big bulldog. 4-4 air trigger. Any boy this will get him head top, lift up in the